Murphy Austin Adams Schoenfeld LLP, focusing on business law and commercial litigation, is proud to support Rob on the Road Region Rising. More information available at murphyaustin.com.
Coming up on Rob at Home, the story of a Sacramento program that is changing thousands of young lives. It's called IYT, Improve Your Tomorrow. Meet co-founder Michael Lynch.
Rob, I had this epiphany, sort of life-changing moment when I was 17 years old. I was a freshman in college. And I got a phone call at about midnight while I was in training camp. I was living my dream.
That phone call led to the calling of his life, to get more young men of color to and through college, with mentors and guidance as early as the 7th grade. It's working. Today, thousands of IYT young men are thriving right here in our region.
I think if anything, we need people to recognize that when they see a young man of color, don't see them for any deficit narrative that you may have seen on TV or heard. See them as a young, brilliant, ambitious, hardworking person who can achieve anything that they set their mind to.
And treat them as if they were your own.
Exactly. Treat them like they were your son.
On Rob at Home.
And now, Rob on the Road, exploring Northern California.
I am so glad to have today's guest join us right now on Rob at Home, Michael Lynch, who is the CEO and the co-founder of Improve Your Tomorrow. Michael, great to see you.
Rob, it is an honor to be on the show. I'm a fan, so I'm excited to be able to have a dialogue.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you too, and thank you. First, right out of the gate, I have to say, wow, your success rate is huge. Your track record is proven, and the number of people that are impacted by this program is phenomenal. First of all, what is it about this that is so magical with you? What's the why?
Yeah, the why and the success all comes down to people. Like at IYT, anytime we begin a meeting, especially when we're talking to someone new or why we do what we do, we always start with the reason behind the program. Why does it exist? And for me, it all comes back to, growing up right in a single parent home, led by my phenomenal father, but also recognizing that growing up in a single parent home, you face challenges that are unique. And growing up in Stockton and Sacramento in communities that had a lot of trial and a lot of tribulation, we were formed to believe that at times, sometimes we weren't good enough. But for me, I had so many people around me who invested in me. Not only did I have a phenomenal father, I had a village of mothers, I had coaches, I had mentors who believed and invested in me. And then when I got to college and saw how few people looked like me outside of the people on my football team, I knew that there was something that had to be done to get more young men of color to and through college. And Rob, I had this epiphany, sort of life-changing moment when I was 17 years old. I was a freshman in college. And I got a phone call at about midnight while I was in training camp. I was living my dream, playing Division I football. And I got a phone call one day that said one of my friends was shot and killed. And for me, that was a moment where I recognized that so much needed to be done to ensure that more young men of color had access and opportunity to a better life. Because coming from the neighborhoods and communities that I grew up in, it was so rare to make it to college, so rare to graduate, and so many young men didn't have an opportunity to live or to realize their full potential.
I'm so sorry about your friend. And that clearly made a major impact on you. And so did what you said. It struck me really loudly when you said, surrounded by messages that you're not good enough, that you saw people who were surrounded by that message. That's a heavy burden.
Yeah. So it's ironic because at the same time you could be surrounded by despair, but at the same time you can recognize the beauty in the despair. Because every day there were people who, despite all the different challenges, were doing their best. We're raising families. You can often just realize, like, what if they had what they had down the street or right in a different school district or in a different neighborhood? If they had the same access to opportunity, could their lives be different? Could our communities be different?
The reasons that make no sense, that there aren't equal access, the reasons that are not fair, the systemic reasons that have caused people to be in situations that have more hills to climb, and that is wrong. You are in a position where you're able to see a lot of good stories and lives changed. First of all, when will we get to the point where everybody in communities of color get these same opportunities that you're able to offer with the young men at IYT or Improve Your Tomorrow?
Yeah, that is a great question, Rob. And I think a lot of us who wake up, in brown and black bodies wonder the same thing. There's this great book by Ibram Kendi called Stamped from the Beginning. He talks about how the foundation of our country was built upon the modernization of a group of people, Black people, Native people whose identities and lives were taken away. And that was the foundation of our democracy. That was the foundation of robbing people of the right to vote, robbing people of land, taking away babies from mothers, taking away liberty. So the foundation of our country is based upon systemic racism. The success that a small percentage of our country experience now was based upon the robbing of other communities. So when will we ever get to that place? I think there has to be a radical doing something dramatically different than what we do now. And let me just give you a quick example. We talk about COVID and school closures. Kids who have, and there is, like, folks know that, hey, listen, COVID and school closures has been bad for a large group of kids. But if you were a kid in a family who had access to internet, who had safe and reliable housing, who had access to food during the school day, who had access to some sort of extra care after school, you did all right in the pandemic. Your grades didn't drop. You didn't go from A's and B's to D's and F's. But if you were a kid who didn't have access to internet, who didn't have access to food on a daily basis, who were living in insecure housing, what you experienced was a drastic decrease in academic learning. So we saw it hand in hand when schools began to close and kids began to realize that, hey, where am I going to eat now, right? Because a lot of kids get their food from schools. So when we talk about doing something different, the first thing we have to do is we have to make sure that the resource allotment, right? The same thing that a kid can get who grows up in a middle-class home should be the same thing that a kid who is growing up in a single-parent home in a challenging neighborhood. Because that kid, it makes no difference in the sense of he or she didn't do anything wrong, right? They're a product of where they are.
What is something that, and this is a hard question, but you're doing it at your location at IYT. What is something that can be taken from there and done on a large scale?
The second great thing they did was they made sure that every kid had access to a laptop. So to me, it's like phenomenal. We've been working in schools now 8 years, and kids got mostly homework that required them to log into the internet. But the problem was that when most of our kids got home, they didn't have internet or they didn't have a laptop. So how are you supposed to complete the work? So the districts made sure that kids had hotspots, right? And then they make sure they had laptops. And I would say, like, another thing is that the school day to me never made a whole lot of sense. Like, why do you make a young person sit in 6 classes for 6 hours per day every single day? Like, for a school district to be able to say, you know what, let's think a little different about how we offer our instructional time. Not every kid learns the best in sitting through a class for 6 hours per day, 6 different classes. So how can we reimagine education to allow kids, if they have to be able to work, right? To ensure they have to work, right? To ensure they still have access to extracurriculars, A through G, to ensure that they can be engaged.
You have seen so many wonderful programs. Your success rate at IYT, 99 to 100% of the young men that get involved in IYT graduate from high school. That's well above the national average, period. And if I'm not mistaken, it's well into the 90s for college as well for your program.
Yeah. So we are extremely fortunate to partner with the right people, but also to have an extraordinary staff of like our team members, like our mentors and our program managers on campus go beyond what's required of them to ensure that young people have like access and opportunities. The earlier that we can get to kids, the more likely they are to be able to have better outcomes. So our outcomes are a result of having a phenomenal team of people who just care deeply about young men and care deeply about equity and opportunity. And our success comes from our partnerships, from our school partnerships to our community-based partnerships, to our foundations who support us. Because without resources, Rob, you know that you can't do anything.
I also want to talk to you about those young men in the program. How do you identify who's going to work with you?
Yeah. So when we come into a school site, we do what's called a draft. And in that draft, we want to draft 50% of the kids who come into the program, they come in below a 2.0 GPA. So we're not looking for the Freddies of the world who we're already on track and doing well and may do well without IYT. We're looking for the young people who are struggling academically, who have some behavior challenges or attendance challenges. And all we need, Rob, is a little bit of want to. So if you want to do better, then we're going to be able to find that want to, show you some extra love, provide you with mentorship and tutoring and college tours and internships, and make sure your parents have the resources that they need to be successful to ensure that young person, that young man of color has an opportunity.
And from there, by the way, I love what you just said about you don't just go in and take the students with the highest grades. You go for people who are struggling and you take them literally by the hand and emotionally, mentally, as well as educationally. And it's that umbrella, almost like you talked about as a child, that you had many moms in the community, many people that cared for you, and you see lives change. Talk to me about some of the stories that you've seen.
I don't know how long we have to be able to tell you about the stories of hope. The coolest part of my job though is seeing how the young men that we're investing in, now they are mentors and leaders in the community, and now they are transforming lives. I'll give you an example. We have a program manager who leads one of our programs at Valley High School when we first started. He is 24, 25, one of our senior leaders in the org. He is phenomenal. He came through the program as a ninth and 10th grader intern. He graduated college a couple years ago. He's one of our senior leaders, and he has impacted, I kid you not, hundreds of young men of color since his time as a mentor. We have another young man. When he came into the program, he was 10th grade. He had literally just immigrated from Mexico, knew very little English. So college, he said his highest aspiration when he was in Mexico was to become a mechanic. College was sort of a thing where he wasn't talked about, wasn't realized. He got into the program, grades got up. He also mentored young men, impacted hundreds of lives. And now he's an advocate working for an organization called Public Health Advocates, where he's helping to work on policy issues for young men of color. So we have another young man. This is the last story. It's one of my favorite stories. He had a 1.67 GPA when he came in. Quiet kid. He would come in every Saturday too and not say anything. I don't think he did much work either in those first couple of weeks when he was involved in IYT. But he got connected to his fellow IYT brothers. He got on some college tours. He got the exposure he needed. 3 semesters later, he had a 4.33 GPA. Got accepted to 13 college. And Rob, take a look at this though. He called me a couple weeks ago. Okay, he still continued at IYT. He still did it while he was in college. He was working for us. He was a mentor. He was helping in the community. He called me a couple weeks ago. He said, Mike, I graduated. I'm official. I'm an Aggie. I'm a UC Davis graduate. Person in his family, he graduated college. He has 2 younger brothers now who thinks college is the only option. So it's not that it's not, not that it's not an option anymore, but now it's the only option.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing when you see what love can do.
Yeah.
You started in, was it 2013?
Yep, 8 years ago.
You started in 2013 with 17 students. This school year alone, you will be working with 2,000 plus students.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, close to 2,000. And like the funny thing is, when Michael and Casper and I, when Michael Casper and I first launched Improve It Tomorrow, I mean, we really didn't know what it was going to be. We just want to simply just help other young men of color get to college like we did. We knew we had some support that a lot of folks in our community didn't. So we said, hey, how can we simply pay it back? And we were both working other jobs. I was working in the state legislature. He was working in banking at US Bank. We just simply came together as best friends and hey, how can we help to serve? And we came up with Improve It Tomorrow. And when we accepted the first group of young men, we had no idea they were going to show up. I remember yesterday, sitting in front of the Career Center at Valley High School, Casper on both sides of the door, April 6, 2013, and wondering if anybody was actually going to show up to that first day. And we had 17 young men show up. We accepted 35 and 17 showed up that first day, and they made up our first cohort of young people. Many of them have graduated college.
Wow, that's amazing. This is such a good, real example as to when you can put forward into your community what comes back to the community itself. Many of the young men that you have worked with have gone back into their communities and become role models for other people in the community. And I did a lot of research when it came to this interview, and I was looking at the numbers of what is spent on prisons versus education. And I'm just curious on your thought about that.
Yeah, as a taxpayer, I'm pissed that there's far more spending on the per student cost of an inmate or a young person who's in juvenile hall or state prison than there is within our education system. It makes no reasonable sense, but it does make sense when you look at our society from an historical perspective. The criminal justice system was, largely designed to control Black people after slavery. Our current system of policing was designed in the South to control Black people after slavery. I mean, after slavery, they created a peonage system that allowed that if I'm identified as a vagrant or don't have a job, then all of a sudden I ended up in an incarceration. So the system, when you look at America's roots, it isn't surprising because of also who the predominant body is, who's in prison, that is a Black or brown male. So, but as a society, we have to take a closer look at ourselves and realize, why do we have so many people of one, right, who look a certain way, who are from a certain neighborhood or a certain background behind bars? It's grossly unfair. It's grossly it's throwing away bodies who can contribute and to be the change makers, the leaders, the fathers, the mothers that we need to ensure that we have a better likelihood of success for all people. The best example of how we can think about equality in this country is our schools. Look at our school outcomes for Black and brown boys. I mean, think about, let's look at the A through G completion within the state of California. So the sequence of courses that you need to attend a public university in the state, so a UC or CSU, are fabulous, public institutions in which all Californians pay to have to be able to support this phenomenal system. In California, you have to pass the sequence of courses, in order to attend after high school. And the individuals who are least likely to pass those sequence of courses are Black males. Less than a third of Black males are A through G eligible upon graduation. That's not because Black males are not as equally as intelligent or as equally as ambitious or as equally doesn't want to go to college. It's a result of our public schools and our lack of investment to ensure that young people who who are products of our community have the resources they need. So who have the hotspots, the computers, right? The access to food, to mentors, to college tours, to tutoring, to teachers who represent and look like they do. Like, that's what that a product of.
Are you encouraged today or are you discouraged today?
The continued racial injustice that we experience in the country, it's like a reoccurring trauma. And I know this too, it's a reoccurring trauma to a lot of people of color, especially Black people. When you see this stuff, like, you only continue to re-traumatize, yourself. So you have to protect yourself. You have to begin to ask yourself, will it ever be different? Will it actually change? And some days I'm like, man, this is tough because I don't see how it can. Other days, and most days, I'm encouraged. And Rob, I'm encouraged because of the young people who I come into encounter with every single day, who despite COVID, who despite racial injustice, who despite poverty, who despite society at times forgetting about they exist, they continue to excel. They continue to push through, they continue to reach for their dreams. And many of them are reaching, many of them are not only reaching, they're grabbing it, they're becoming college graduates, they're working in professional jobs, and they're serving others.
I know that you are getting feedback from many of your students about what has been happening in this world today. How do you, knowing that how heavy it is for you to carry as a human, how do you turn around and then inspire and encourage your students? When you yourself are hurting.
Yeah. You have to be authentic. You have to speak your truth, but you also have to recognize that the only way that it changes is with us. Systems, right? So what does it say, government? Systems are run by people. People create the environments in which we live, right? And we'll say policymakers create the environments in which we live. We as individuals, we have an opportunity to be a part of that process, to change and shape the systems that govern our lives. So what I point to is hey, there has been examples and continuous examples of communities that have changed, communities that have progressed. What we do is we point to examples to show hope. We say, listen, hey, if that person can do it, you can do it. And you can do it because you have us. You have a collective group of other brothers, of other people who love you and care for you and want you to be your best.
What would you say to them for hope?
As cliche as it is, I will say, be the change that you want to see. If you look at your life right now and you recognize that you want a different life, then you have to do something different than the people who have came before you. So despite the obstacles that sit in front of you, despite maybe not a lack of motivation, a lack of resources, maybe all the different issues that are going on outside of your front door, if you want something different has to be done. You can't go down the same aisle as everybody else and pick out the same materials and expect a different result.
And also what I hear is many of the people that you're trying to help don't even get the same supplies in that aisle that they're walking down to pick from. So imagine the deficit that some of these students are already going into, what they see as an opportunity. And that's on us. That's on adults.
You're right. That's on us as adults to change it. That's on us as adults to ensure that we as people who have resources or networks are ensuring that our policymakers are making the best decisions on our behalf. So who we are voting for, but also that we're involved. That we're involved in making sure that somebody else who may not have had the same access to a parent, a mentor, a resource, has something, right, to be able to get ahead.
Absolutely. What is it that keeps you getting up every day and doing this, especially lately?
Yeah, my dad. So I grew up in a single parent home. My mom left early on when I was a kid. And my dad was a person who never gave up, never yielded. And, he had 3 biological kids himself, but there was a community of kids called him dad. There was my friends, my cousins who he helped raise. It was a life of sacrifice for others, and he got very little in return. Whatever we had growing up, it went to whatever extras we had, or we had enough, it always went to help somebody else. So like anytime I get down and recognize that, man, this is a really hard job to try to get young men of color who are struggling academically to college. I'm hopeful that, that I have a dad who did it without anybody else telling him that he had to do it, that he served and ensured that other people had opportunities.
That's amazing. What a good man, and what a good man he raised.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Michael Lynch, with Improve Your Tomorrow, the awesome organization that is helping thousands of people right here in Northern California, and thus impacting the entire world. That's huge. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Rob, for the opportunity.
Absolutely, anytime.
Murphy Austin Adams Schoenfeld LLP, focusing on business law and commercial litigation, is proud to support Rob on the Road, Region Rising. More information available at murphyaustin.com.